Hi everyone, we're happy to have you here. It's Devika from QGLUE. And Dan, thank you so much for taking out the time and creating this great webinar for us. So I'll just give a quick introduction. QGLUE is a QAI promoted venture. We are evangelizing design thinking innovation in India and globally. We partnered with Tire Delhi NCR 2 years back in 2017 to launch the first ever design-led entrepreneurship awards. We aim to recognize, reward, and help startups, help companies, help organizations to use the design thinking principles, use innovation in a way that can help them grow and make businesses successful. So this year we have the conference on 14th, 15th November. This is the Thai Global Summit. And yeah, we're super excited. It's our third year and we have Dan with us. And now over to you, Dan.
Hello, I'm here. I'm just waiting. I've switched on. All right. Shall I begin? Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm going to put the video on first, so you can actually put a face instead of just an audio. It's really strange for me to just be talking to a computer. So please feel free to answer it. Pose any questions, and I'll do my best to not get distracted by the interface. But hello and welcome to Australia. So I'm going to put the presentation on and turn this off. I just thought it'd be nice for you to actually see a real person behind this. So give me one moment. Hopefully I don't cut you all off. And play. Okay, can I just get a yes to just say that everybody can see the QGLUE front cover? Is that possible? Can everyone see that? I'm going to assume that there's no no's, so you can all see that, which is awesome. Okay, so today I'm going. Well, we went to do. Okay, so is there a question there? There is. Has the webinar started? Yes, the webinar started. Okay, so the title of today's webinar is Marketing Your Product for Success. And the webinar will take you through the simple marketing framework we use internally and with our clients. Now, the objective of this talk is to help you and your team understand the complexities at each stage of the customer journey, and then how to adjust your approach and ensure you're aware of all those magic metrics that you should be tracking to inform you of what your customers are doing. Now, you'll be able to take this framework and use it in your own marketing and comms efforts. So we're confident that whatever stage you're at, that this will be relevant to you. So our objective today is to define each stage of the customer journey and how to adjust your approach accordingly. Our agenda for this evening, so we've got, I think we've got about 50 minutes left. So our agenda is, we're going to start with discussing the importance of having a strategy, then about understanding your audience, which is key to everything you do, how to apply these insights of your audience into this framework, and then we're going to end with a quick recap before a Q&A. Now, I'm going to try, I keep getting different icons pop up on my screen. I'm getting used to this interface, so my apologies if I get distracted, but I'll try not to. But if there's any questions that come up, please feel free to ask throughout, and I'll do my best to answer. So who am I? So my name's Dan Levy. I run a corporate innovation and strategy consultancy called More Space for Light. We're based in Australia. I'm the principal of this company, and we basically help organizations define, design, and deliver their digital and product strategies to help them connect and grow with their customers. We're also part of we're partner of a company called Design Sprint Academy, based out of Berlin. Now, Design Sprint Academy have partnerships globally, one of which with QGLUE, who are hosting and have kindly invited us to speak. Also in Montreal, with Libio, a company in Paris, and a company in Amsterdam, and also Scotland. So we're really, really fortunate to be part of that, and that enables us to be part of a global network of product strategists and innovators. Now, we've run workshops and design sprints both locally and globally with some of the biggest national and global companies worldwide and help them with their strategies and their comms, etc. So that's a bit about us. So we're going to start with strategy, and we're going to talk about that low barrier of entry. The low barrier of entry into the world of setting up a business. Now, I know many of you are a part of this award scheme and you have a product of whatever level, and you might not have actually thought about these parts, these components of it yet. So I'm going to introduce you to some of those tools that make it so easy to set up these days, because you've really got the opportunity to thrive and compete on such a global scale with minimum investment and such a small stack, whether that's Amazon Marketplace to sell, Kickstarter to raise funds, Alibaba for logistics and distribution. Even if you've got a product and service, it's very easy to launch it in the App Store or get it onto Apple Arcade. There's endless avenues to compete, and you have all of these tools at your disposal. Now, if you're not familiar, the top one is the business model canvas. If you've never done a business model canvas before, I strongly suggest you do one. It really helps you get a top line overview of your overall business strategy and who you are targeting and revenue models. Then you've got Canva to do your design, social channels to reach and connect with your tribe. Inkmonk, the audience out of India would recognize Inkmonk, who can produce your cards and your printed collateral. Squarespace to make a website to promote your product service. Paytm, so you can start generating revenue, to MailChimp, all the way underpinned by Google Analytics and analytics platforms, so you can learn what your customers are doing and adapt accordingly. So as you can see, it's super easy once you've got an idea and a product to actually apply it and launch it out there into the world. But at the same time, it can also be a bad thing, as there's no barrier and there's so much noise. Right now, as of, well, this study was taken in April 29, there were more than 7,000 marketing technology options, all competing for the attention of a very similar audience. Now, as I stated, it's such a low bar of entry to start a company. It's easier than ever to promote. And as a result, it's easier than ever to blend in amongst the competition. And this is why it's so important to ensure you're not just pressing publish and playing the waiting game. This is why it's important to have a plan. Because as you know, you've got your product and you launch it. If you do nothing, you're just another tree in the woods. You have to be proactive. You have to have a plan. You have to start gathering insights, because insights allow you to be agile in your approach. Now, some of you may already be invested in your marketing initiatives. I'm just wondering, how many of you already feel like you're ticking the box and doing the same thing over and over again with little difference in ROI? So our goal today is simple. We're going to share with you a tool to help you plan how you engage with your audience at each stage of their journey when discovering your product or service, then prompt you to consider how to keep them active and engaged once they become a customer or member. I've just seen somebody join us. Good day, Steve. I know Steve's coming from Australia. So this customer journey framework, you'll be able to clearly communicate your goals, focus your approach to market, define your performance measures, and allocate your budgets accordingly. And as a result, as a caveat, I'm mindful not to give you specific applications. I'm just going to give you the containers that you can go off and fill. So when we start designing some sort of comms plan or strategy, we employ a concept of 3-level thinking. And each level feeds into the next. And we believe one can't exist without the other. So at a macro level, you have your strategy. Now you need this as it's your all. It incorporates your North Star. Now your North Star is the definition or your purpose and vision, and it should be simple, learnable, and repeatable. So that's really important. Your North Star has to be simple, learnable, and repeatable. Then the market. Where do you fit? Who is your competition, sorry, both in category and adjacent categories? Now, I'm assuming the audience here is mainly startups. So I'm again going to assume that you guys are the disruptors. You are that adjacent category that are coming and playing in those already established markets. Then there's your people, your existing resources, who you incorporate into your projected growth strategy to ensure you're building that high performing team as you go forward. Your customers, who you are solving the problem for. How do you ensure they're in sync with your mission and therefore you're providing and demonstrating value? And finally, your channels and platforms. These are the things you use to connect and serve your audience. So that's at a macro level. That incorporates all elements of your strategy. Then at a micro level, these are the frameworks. These are the things that knot everything together to allow you to organize an approach to realize your strategy. And finally, at a nano level, the operational processes and workflows you follow. Now, once you start getting reps under your belt, all of this becomes easier to start applying that magic. Now, also, I do understand we're all startups at heart, and there's a lot of people here that are very early on in their company, in their growth. And at the same time, we all thrive in the chaos. For many of us, our focus is spent paddling and keeping our heads above the water. But start applying this kind of system thinking and you'll benefit, not just from your sanity, your health, but also the relationships you have with your staff and more importantly, your loved ones. So in regards to your strategy, I'm going to assume that this is already in place. And today we're going to focus on your customer journey or your marketing framework. Your customer journey and your marketing framework. And to employ this, you need to have some sort of reasonable level of understanding of who you are targeting. Now, unlike most books and literature on the subject, I believe finding product market fit is an iterative process, something that you should not stress too much about while you're at the initial stages of your business. Being agile will allow you to mature your offering and maximize the opportunities that are presented. So we're going to start by looking at your customers. Excuse me. And they're key to your framework. So start by taking the time to understand your customers. Focus on their intent instead solely on their demographics. Now, by saying that, I mean not just about they're a parent or their age, but think about more about what their jobs are, what they're trying to achieve. What do you know about them? What are their behaviors and actions now? Whether you're in the market or not, what are they doing right now? And also assess how will your product make that difference that will make them switch. Now, by understanding your customers, you can understand their pains of today, but also throughout their journey. And then going forwards, organize and orientate your entire offering around this. So I'm going to share with you a couple of tools to keep in mind when trying to understand your customers and build profiles so everyone understands who you are targeting. By using these tools, you should have a better understanding of how to capture who your customers are, their functional jobs, emotional fears, pains, and anxieties, as well as their personal and social goals. So the first tool I'm going to show you is the empathy map. Now, the purpose of the empathy map is it enables you to put yourself in the perspective of your audience and start making those subjective decisions from your audience's perspective. So there's three key areas that you start to note down about your audience. And what are they thinking about the situation? What information can you gather where they're experiencing their pain points? What are they saying? Now, in regards to saying, you can get this information from review sites, conducting surveys, and also, from review sites and surveys. And finally, what are they feeling? How do they feel about things? We recommend going out there, doing some interviews, testing, go and find out what they're saying, collating this data and presenting it back, and then organizing it into these buckets. So that's the first tool, the empathy map. Has anybody got any questions about the empathy map? Can I see the question? No, no questions. Okay, the second tool. The second tool is the customer proposition canvas. Now, the customer proposition canvas is a tool that enables you to find out what the value your company promises to deliver to the customers if they choose to buy your product. And it will help you confirm that your product is solving the customer's problem by understanding their point of view. And once you've defined your customers, you can then assess your product offering and modify your product offering or marketing messages to suit. Now, what I'm saying is you start on the left and you gather those insights from your empathy map. And once you have that understanding, you're then able to assess and put the relevant things in the right-hand box, which is your product. You should be adapting your offering to match your customers' needs. Because if your offering doesn't match your customers' needs, you're targeting the wrong customers. So this is a really valuable tool for doing that. You're never going to find it perfect, but you really want to find some sort of middle ground between your objectives and your customer needs. And you can't be all things for everyone. You have to be focused and slowly build out where and how it makes sense. Now, before we proceed, do you want me to go over these tools? Do you have any questions about either of these tools? No? Oh, is that a comment? No, you're all good. Okay. So the next stage is applying it to your customer journey framework. So this is the customer journey framework. Is anyone already familiar with this? Now, people can overcomplicate the marketing strategy, but essentially it comes down to two streams of conversion. Acquisition on the left, which is basically getting customers, and retention on the right, which is keeping customers. Does this make sense? Now, this can be broken down into stages, which we'll go into in more depth. Now, if you wish to play along during this section of the talk, what I suggest you do is go and get a sheet of paper, fold it in half and put two big headings. On the left, put acquisition, and on the right, put retention. And I'll ask you at certain points to note things down, or you can put them in the chat bar and people can start contributing and we can have a discussion around that. So let's start with acquisition, getting customers. So this is sections all about learning and building product market fit and the promise of value. And this, make no mistake, is the hard part, because your goal is to find your customers and demonstrate the promise of value. There is an equal mix of discovery and optimization. And I was going to say optimism. Here you are learning your most effective channels and messages and then doubling down on them. Where most companies that have the tools and all the gear and get straight in there with set everything up, where they fall down is that they focus on the latter part of acquisition, the sales. They skip the love. They skip the learning and nurturing who and what the needs of their customers are. These are the most effective levers that will trigger an action. A lot of companies and a lot of people feel more comfortable in the transaction phase. They set up an e-commerce website and they sell stuff. I'm sure many of you already get those emails, which is the promise of the sale or whatever it is. It's not very engaging, but it's easy. It's easy to do that. And it's an easy path. It doesn't mean it leads to success. Now, the first phase of acquisition is discovery. So I'm going to show you some of the tactics or the different stages to employ to go through the acquisition path. So discovery is all about learning and building that product market fit and the promise of value. So really, the questions you're looking to find here is, where do people discover you? This is the sort of stuff that you're looking to find out. So all those different channels. Why are you grabbing their attention? What are you doing that piques their attention? And what is your most effective channel? So this is around discover. So you might want to put a heading underneath the acquisition titled Discover, subheading, and put a few dot points down of what you're doing or what you intend on doing, where you believe customers will discover you, and what you're going to do to grab their attention, and what channels you're employing or you're currently employing. And some of the different channels at this stage that you might use might be viral or word of mouth, and this refers to referral programs, social media community engagement, giveaways, crowdfunding, quizzes, to organic, and this comes down to search optimization, PR and speaking, content marketing and distribution, email marketing or strategic partnerships, to the third one, which is paid. And this could be online ads, influencer campaigns, retargeting, sponsorship, direct mail, or traditional ads. Don't overlook how valuable paid is to supercharge a visibility and get you seen. For example, if you're trying to test something and got something in a prototype stage, there's no harm in you putting some money behind a paid campaign, driving people through to some form of Squarespace landing page, just to see if you got any kind of interest. So that's the discover phase. The next part of this is learn. So I ask you to put the heading learn next if you want to note down some of the questions or answers you want to put against this. So once people find out about you, where do they go next? Where can they learn more about you? How are you providing more information? On top of that, how do you validate that? How do you demonstrate success? Do you have case studies? Do you have stats? Where's the promise? And the next question, once you have all this information laid out, what is driving people to those conversion points? So once you have this information and you start asking these questions, you're then ready to move on to conversion. And the questions you should be looking to answer here and assess against is, how can you make that purchase experience easy? Now, there's no harm in getting it up, but you should be always looking at how you can optimize it. And the second question is, how do you acknowledge a first-time customer? Do you treat a first-time customer and an ongoing customer differently? And then how do you remove those friction points? So feel free if you want to ask any questions at this point. So the final question here, once they've made that conversion, is what's next? So that's pretty much the acquisition part. So it breaks down into 3 stages. So discover, learn, and convert. And those are some of the questions you should be asking at each stage, or when you're marketing that product and what your customers are going through. So these are some of the questions that they should be asking. Now, the next stage is retention. Retention is all about keeping your customers and using them as devices to onboard new customers. And this is where, from a business point of view, you're able to reap the benefits of your investment. Retaining customers is a lot cheaper than acquiring them. And it's also an opportunity to learn and invest in other areas of your strategy. Retention can be split into 2. The first stage of this is activation. Activation is all around getting customers to be more active users and buyers, or more engaged with your product or service. This is where you demonstrate value to your customers and you build relationship. It's also where you can be a bit more bolder to learn about your customers without risk of investing in efforts that fall on deaf ears, i.e. in the discovery segment. So the sort of questions you should be asking you are, what are you doing to make your customers more active users or buyers? Or what do you intend on doing to make your users and customers more active buyers? So it might be worth putting a header there under retention and answer these questions. Also, how are you experimenting in approaches? Are you splitting up your team and half of you are looking on the acquisition and half of you are looking at the retention, and then you have some sort of plan in place where you can feed those insights backwards and forwards to each other? It's really important to consider this because they both knit together. The second part of retention is all about retaining your customers. This is where keeping them and using them to onboard new customers. So the question you really want to be asking at this point is, how do you keep your customers for the long term? And how, most importantly, do you stay relevant as a business, which is really important. And the final, what are the key metrics that demonstrate that retention? So just to recap, those are both of the stages of retention. And this is what the overall framework looks like. So looking at your sheet, if you've followed along, you should have a mini state of play at this point, as well as the start of a framework that you may or may not have been employing. Now, no doubt there'll be gaps and there'll be a bit more questions and answers, but that's cool. It's an organic process and it's ongoing. It's something hopefully that you feel confident enough to continue to evolve. So as I was saying, just to recap, you should be looking at splitting your strategies around acquisition and retention, and then getting the teams to talk to each other. So the retention team should be providing the acquisition team with the insights so they know how to refine their efforts, especially in the discovery stage. And then you should be promoting people in the retention stage within the learn, whether that's through success stories. Should we move on to metrics? Hold on. Can you give any case study on acquisition and retention? How to acquire a customer? Sorry, I've missed a couple of the questions, so I'm just going to stop here. Please go over the tools. Hitesh, I'm just going to ask you, are you referring to, if you're referring to the empathy map and the customer proposition framework, what I'll do at the end, if you ask that question, we'll go over that again. Which solves their fear regarding healthcare or in emergency. What should be the most effective starting point? So I'm just going to quickly answer Pratik's question in terms of how to acquire the customer for a product which solves their fear or phobias regarding their healthcare issues or in emergency cases. What should be the most effective starting point? So in regards to that, I would be looking at gathering that data and potentially going out and doing some customer surveys or bringing in customers or speaking to experts. You can go on Facebook groups and look for people within that cohort and put up polls, and then look at family and friends that might have experienced. Make your life easy, start from an easy place. And then once you understand, you can start gathering those insights and you can start looking for key points and trends. So that's Protect. Can you give any case studies on acquisition and retention? I can provide case studies at a later date. For today, I'm just basically running through these frameworks, Ravi. Okay, so I'm sorry I missed out on your questions. These boxes are really small, so I'll keep trying to look back at them. All right, so let's talk about measurements, measuring what matters. So we will consider how to incorporate metrics now as part of your scorecard. So what are those metrics that matter for your business, that indicate performance and growth? Now, from a tracking perspective, you're looking for behavioral metrics that lead to conversions and growth metrics that lead, you're looking for behavioral metrics that lead to conversions and growth metrics, such as referral links, time on page, bounce rates, keywords, click-through rates, cost per click for paid. And we're going to highlight just a few of the ones we feel are really important that will help you focus your efforts both on customer types and your marketing efforts. So I'm going to present to you a couple now. So the first being cost to acquire. Cost to acquire is the cost to acquire a new customer or member. Basically, what this means is this is the net cost of all your marketing efforts that basically converts a customer. So that could be a blog, advertising, copywriting, design. So you can start to put a cost of all your efforts that leads to a conversion. Your goal is basically to lower your cost to acquire. And the way you lower your cost to acquire is becoming more tailored, more specific. And how you become more tailored and more specific is by understanding what the cues are that cause or trigger your audience to respond and progress along that framework or get in touch with you. The more you build those experiences and service they crave your audience, the lower your cost per click should be. Oh, there's another question. What the key, so Pratik asked what the key changes in the strategy for B2B and B2C, because the conversion times in the average purchase price are highly varied. That's very true, but they're very different in the respect of sometimes with B2B, you have to look at the different parties in B2B and you have to figure out how you put them in order and how you go to market in terms of, sorry, so let me just think about how I'm going to answer that. What are the key changes in the strategy? Well, with B2B, I guess the channel's direct. You usually have a one-to-one, you're already talking to them, or it's or you have like a known, it's more of a almost more of a binary sale, because you know what those problems are. You're launching into more of a known area, and you have other competitors that you can look for. So within those kind of websites with different that have all the ratings and things like that. So you've got to make sure that you're visible there. With business to consumer, there's a lot more options. You're really looking at those insights, those behavioral insights. So it's a bit more personal. Again, I can go offline and answer questions in regards to that. So going back to the talk, cost per acquire, the next one's customer penetration. And customer penetration is the number of customers you acquire for your marketing efforts. It's basically increasing the number of customers. So study the drivers and barriers of both to optimize here. What are the things that are stopping you from growing that customer base? So the difference between cost to acquire, that's based around the actual cost of your marketing efforts. Customer penetration is basically the result of what you're doing that leads. So this isn't around cost, this is more around your activities that actually lead to growth. So that whether that's blogging, whether that's what those most effective channels are. The next one's churn rate. The churn rate's often known as the leaky bucket. And this is the number of customers who cut ties with your service or customers, or your service or company. Now, the churn rate is, regardless of how you choose to represent churn, tracking your churn rate is tantamount to success. It's almost cheaper and easier to retain customers than it is to go through the process of acquiring new ones. Monitoring churn is the first stage in understanding how good you are at retaining customers and identifying what actions might result in a higher retention rate. Now, how you understand your churn rate is you lay it out over your overall marketing journey map, and you look for where you're losing customers. So if you have a number of customers, say for instance, click on an ad that goes through to your website, that goes through to a conversion page, that goes through to a checkout, that falls through before you get to the checkout, or falls through at a certain stage of the checkout, you've already got one area of that leaky bucket. Say for instance, they convert and they go on to your marketing messages and they unsubscribe from your marketing messages. There is another point that they could potentially churn. Say for instance, you lose them and they stop becoming a customer of you. They're no longer a customer of you, and they no longer engage, they're no longer active. That's another churn rate. So there's different points in that overall framework that you can see where you're losing customers. And finally, customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is the estimated value of current and future customer revenues. And this is the net present value of all, this is, sorry, a complex measure, but it's important to make this a central part of your scorecard. And basically what this means is that you can, by looking at a cohort being a group of customers, you can look at how often that they purchase from you, how often they engage with your marketing messages, and you can start working out which group is the most valuable to your company. And once you can work out which group is the most valuable to your company, you can refer back to your personas and your customer proposition framework that we introduced earlier, and see if you're targeting the right customer group. Now, if you're not targeting the right customer group, or the customer group you're intending on targeting haven't got a high lifetime value, then you can adjust your customer proposition framework so it suits more accordingly with that customer group that has that higher value to your business. So I'm assuming everyone's still with me here because I haven't got any new questions. So the big thing now is I've introduced these concepts, but how do you apply them to your scorecard? Pretty simple. So once we start knitting it together, hopefully it makes sense. So I haven't got too deep today. So the cost to acquire is very much at the top end. This is all of your efforts to basically get them into that learn stage, to actually push them across and get them into your knit. So hopefully they'll be subscribing to your newsletter. The customer penetration, that's all about your marketing efforts. What has the deepest penetration? What are the platforms? What are the messages that drive people through to that conversion stage? Your churn rate, a really reasonable start to your churn should be from when they convert, when they actually really become a potential prospect. A prospect is of higher value to a lead because they show interest, all the way through to retention. And where do they drop off? So as I mentioned before, there's a couple of churn points. So that could be where during that basket, when you have that basket, when you're looking to get them to convert to a sale. It could also be where they're dormant, they've made a sale and they no longer engage. For example, you sell clothes, they no longer buy any clothes from you, they only buy one purchase and you can't work out why. That's when it's time to start experimenting with that group. And retention as well. The question you have to ask with retention, why are you no longer relevant? Why are they popping out of your funnel, and why are they popping out of your community? So I'll give you a moment just to take a note of that. So let's recap. So hopefully the things that we've gone through today make sense, and hopefully they provide some form of framework. Now, I appreciate there's people at different stages of their product development, on product maturity or service maturity. So I've tried to keep everything super high level. However, I believe that these strategies and these frameworks are really effective. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. If you're already quite a mature business or a mature startup, you can look back and see, whether what you're doing already makes sense and whether you're adapting and applying your conversation at different stages. If you're brand new and you're in that, you're part of that award scheme and you've just got this far in that competition, you might just be focusing on product for the moment, then having this framework in place is almost like a superpower, because you might just be focused on product and you might not have looked externally outside and really started to think about your customers, and started to go out there and speak to them. And you also might not have thought about what's our method to market, because you really, the fun doesn't stop once you go for launch and once you get out of beta. So let's go over some of those things that we spoke about. So the whole concept of 3-level thinking. So we spoke about the macro, your strategy, and the key components of your strategy. You should have a North Star, and the North Star, it should be simple, it should be learnable, it should be repeatable. It doesn't have to be too complex. You want people to be able to talk about it to different people in the business. You want them to be able to share it. Then there's the market, and that's all about where you fit into the market. Where are you going to win? Who is your competition? Your people, your resources, your team, and then your customers. Who are you solving the problem for? How do you ensure they're in sync with your mission? And then finally, your channels and platforms that you use to connect and serve your audience. Then at the next level, you have your frameworks, your micro level, your frameworks, and this knits everything together. So you would have seen that framework there, and so you would have seen that customer journey framework, and that will help you organize your approach to realize your strategy. And then finally, at a nano level, you have your operational processes, your workflows to follow. And once you start getting reps under your belt, it becomes easier to apply that magic. So we just covered frameworks and customers today. And the customer journey framework we covered looked like this. So we had 2 main stages, which was acquisition and retention. And within acquisition, we had 3 stages. We had discover, learn, and convert. And then in retention, we had activate and retain. Now, I believe personally that activate is really important. It's often overlooked, because once you've got the customers, we go out there and we always feel like we need to hunt for more. You should be looking to exhaust those customers already in your within your CRM, within your customer base. And a real world example of that would be Apple. So somebody's just asked about a real world example. Look at Apple. So they're going from a product company to all of a sudden a service company. They're looking at how they can maximize the spend of their customers now. So instead of just selling them AirPods and iPhones and MacBooks, they're now looking at the services. They're then looking at the credit cards. And I'm sure what will be next is that with an Apple credit card that you'll be able to subscribe and monthly updates of products and services and lease their products and services. And before long, no doubt you'll be locked into their complete ecosystem. So as opposed to someone like Google, whose ecosystem starting to revolve around their AI, Apple are starting to use their services, for example, their credit card, to lock people into their products. Really interesting. So that's how does this acquisition, this customer journey framework apply to the scorecard we mentioned? So just looking at that scorecard, we have cost to acquire, customer penetration, churn rate, and customer lifetime value. Again, this is very high level, but as you can see, it being high level, you can just get a gauge, an idea of where you should be assessing and where you should be coming up with some form of scorecard at each stage of that customer journey. And that scorecard really informs the conversation and the way you adapt your approach for each stage. Now, finally, and most importantly of all, is accountability. So I'm going to ask you a question now. Can anyone take a guess of what I'm trying to say here? Now, I'm going to take a pause and have a sip of water. So can anyone guess what I'm trying to say here, which is really important in regards to scorecard, in regards to everything you do, and accountability, especially when you're talking to stakeholders and talking to suppliers, and you want to get some form of accountability for them? What do you think I'm trying to say? I haven't lost anyone, so people are obviously thinking. So I'll give you a clue. Benchmark. So benchmark everything you do. It's super important, whether that's monthly or weekly. As soon as you do something, record that stat. Have a look at how people are doing. So for example, we've been working with a company and they've been investing a lot of time in regards to their blog. However, their blog hasn't been a very effective tool for them. They've had 0 conversions off of it. They've got no leads. They're not driving people to conversion points. Now, that's a bad thing. However, the fact that we were able to present those stats to them means that they're able to adapt their approach. So as opposed to keep throwing their money and their investment in creating content for an audience that isn't being pushed towards their CRM or becoming a client, they're now able to use these insights and incorporate them to a better outcome. So I'm going to give you a quote, and this is from a chap called Ash Mora. Now, he's author and creator of the Lean Canvas and founder of a company called Lean Stack. He also has a book called Running Lean. So I'm just going to copy and paste, his book into the chat module. And I highly recommend anyone that's building a product and service go out and buy that book. And what he basically says is there are no silver bullets. There's no methodology that can guarantee success, but a good methodology can provide a feedback loop for continuous learning and improvement. So what I'm basically saying by sharing this framework is that it's not perfect, but it's good enough to get you started. It's high level enough for you to be able to take that as a boilerplate and adapt it and get that feedback loop, because that's the most important thing. So let's look at some of the takeaways from today. First being strategies, frameworks, and processes aren't the devil. I know we're startups and we thrive in chaos, but start to employ these things. Take time to understand and define your customers. It's really important. Thank you, Emily. That's correct. Benchmark. I just got your question there. And change your approach for the different stages of the customer journey. And finally, and most important of all, measure what matters. So that comes to the end of our talk. We just hit the 45 minutes. So this is who we are. So I'm going to open the floor now to questions. So that's our email. There's our web address. We are slowly publishing case studies. There was a few people that asked questions about specific metrics and case studies. So bear with us. We're going to be putting those up in the next few months. We'll be releasing videos that demonstrate our case studies. We've also got Instagram. So Instagram, we're more space 4 light with number 4 instead of FOR. We're also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we're FOR, more space 4 light. So connect with us either on Instagram, which is more space with a 4, number 4 light, or on LinkedIn. And that's where we mainly are. So let me ask you, now that I can divert my attention, Kumar, Davika, you might want to come in at this point, but has anyone got any questions, anything they want me to answer while you still got me here? So I'm just going to leave the floor open for a moment. The awkward end.
So You've seen the other questions already? You've
Yeah,
answered?
yeah, I've been answering as we gone along.
Okay, great, great. Hi, Turan. There will be a recording of this, so don't worry. It'll be up on YouTube. You can catch it there anytime.
Okay, I just seen Kumar saying that there's I missed about 20 minutes at the beginning. Can I get a recording of this? Great. Let me know the details. I'm sure they'll come out. Thank you very much for the presentation. You're welcome. Thank you for the 24 people that are still here, that stayed to the end. Is there anything else?
Thank you so much, Dan. I think it was great. It's a great webinar, and we loved having you. It was informative. It was great. There was some fun also. And okay, Ritu wants you to answer a question. She's upset with you now.
What's that?
I think Ritu had a question earlier. Can you provide a real world example on how CAC will be calculated for a particular business by assuming some numbers?
I've just lost all my questions. So I'll provide that via email. I can. Okay, is that everything, Kumo?
Yeah.
Are you there? Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's everything. I think we've hit an hour. I've got no more questions coming up. Okay, I'm going to turn off my webcam now. So thank you very much for everyone that was attended. Have a lovely evening. Have a lovely day. Hopefully I provided some value. You had our email address there. We gave you some links to our social channels. So please feel free to connect. I believe More Space is going to be a mentor for the program. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some value to some of you once you go through the program. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Dan.
Pleasure. Cheerio.
చిత్ర కూడా సరిగ్గా ఉంది చిత్ర కొన్ని కూడా సరిగ్గా